Okay, hello everybody. Thank you for joining us for our second in this Building Bridges webinar. Again, this will be recorded and uploaded to our YouTube channel where you can see our previous one, which was on Indigenous survivors, and also a little sneak peek. I'll be sending out details on Monday, on Tuesday. Monday's a holiday, but our next one will be on plural families, and that will be in September. So keep an eye out for details on that one. And we're excited to bring this and continue this series with all of you. For today, again, we're talking on supporting Pacific Islander communities in Utah, and we have the privilege of having Susie with us, who is one of my heroes. I've worked with her for years now, with Rape Recovery Center and here with Utah Coalition Against Sexual Assault, and she is just a powerhouse. And like I said in my email, like a wealth of knowledge and super willing to share. And she's not just an advocate for the Pacific Islander community, she's really an advocate for anybody. And I'm sure she'll speak to that. And just a quick plug, if you don't mind me, Susie, talking about, since you just invited me to the committee, one of my favorite events that PICTAR puts together is a Heels to Heal event, which is in October. Do we have a date for it yet?
Yep, it's Saturday, October 26th
And it's that one at the Peace Gardens, right, in Salt Lake.
at the Peace Gardens,
Okay, so
12 noon to 2 p.m.
great. So if you're in the area, you can come by and make fun of me walking in heels for a mile. Last time I did it, I think I only walked maybe half of it in heels, and it's such a fun event. You see like big athletes trying to walk in heels. When I've done it, I come in last place by a long shot. I think somebody that was like 70 years old beat me like by 50 yards. And I kept collapsing. They have like a couple of sisters that show up, and they call them the Blister Sisters, and they take care of the guys when their feet are hurting. And I was the only one who needed help that year. They were basically like propping me up the whole time. It was embarrassing, but I'm going to shop for my own heels this year so that I'm more comfortable. So yeah, if you're around town, welcome to do that. And with that, I'll hand it over to you, Susie, and you can explain what PICTAR is and what it does, and we can go from there.
Thank you, thank you. I mean, really, thank you all for attending today in your busy schedule. Like Jorge said, this is a holiday weekend, and so we appreciate you joining us about a very serious subject that we are going to discuss. I'd like to also thank you, Casa, for the opportunity to share about the sexual assault in the Pacific Island community and the gaps in the services that I've seen. Jorge is going to help me out today. If you have any questions or comments, you feel free to unmute. You can post comments, and what we'll do is we will address those because I like to answer the questions or respond while the question is fresh and it's relevant. And so he'll be watching the chat. And also, if you feel like you want to just say something, please unmute and speak. So you can post any of your questions in the chat. And I just wanted to ask if you can just show by hand or put in the chat how many of you are advocates, community health workers, or certified peer support that have worked with Pacific Islanders or not, or if you're from the community, just so that we know what our audience is today. If you want to just put in the chat. Oh, and I have to give a shout out. I am very excited to see a very good friend and ally, Nani Wilson from San Francisco, that is here online with us today. So thank you so much for taking time out, Nani, for participating with us. Well, thank you for putting it. Kind of just gives me an idea of who the audience is. I mean, again, this is going to be a space for learning, and it's okay to try things out here. This is a safe place. If you'd like to post your questions or comments as you think about them, I want you to think about posting the question, asking the question right when the question comes to mind. Because often what happens is we wait until it's politically correct question and our brain does these acrobats to make it. And I believe that it's in that gap that the question really is not what you wanted to hear. And so this is a safe place to just ask the questions. We can make mistakes here. And please, this if we're doing this conversation right today, we are going to feel a little uncomfortable, right? And remember that uncomfortable doesn't mean unsafe. And so this is a space today that we are going to learn about culturally relevant approaches, healing, and prevention. So I'm going to start with just history and demographics here in Utah. So in 1880s, a group of Pacific Islanders, mostly Hawaiians, immigrated to Salt Lake City after joining the LDS, the Church of Jesus Christ, the LDS Church. And that was in the 1880s. Per 2020 census, Utah has the fifth largest number of Pacific Islanders in all of the United States. We are 1.8% of the population in Utah, which makes us third highest percentage of Pacific Islanders in the United States. Utah has the fourth largest Samoan community and has the second largest Tongan community right here in Utah. We have about 80,000 Pacific Islanders that live in Utah. And I know a lot of people are probably very surprised, but I am going to give some context to Pacific Islanders. Pacific Islanders are made up of three groups. They are Polynesians, which a lot of people are familiar, Tongan Samoans, Native Hawaiians. We have the Melanesian community, which are your Fijians, the, who else we have in this community would be the Papua New Guineans, and then we have the Micronesians. And I think Utah community is getting more used to Micronesians, but that's going to be people from Pohnpei, from Marshall Islands, from Yap, and some of the countries there that are in Micronesia. So just to give you some context of who we are, how long we've been here, and for you to understand. I think a lot of people think that we're a very new community, and I guess in essence we are. 1800s is not a long time to have lived in the state of Utah. So let's shift over to sexual assaults in Utah. So studies in Utah suggest that 19.9% of females and 6.5% of males experience rape or attempted rape during their life, and nearly 1 in 3 women will experience some form of sexual violence during their lives. Rape is the only violent crime in Utah that is higher than the national average. So based on that, if we have 80,000 Pacific Islanders that live in Utah, and let's say hypothetically that 50% of them are women, that we are saying that 7,960 victims, females, will experience rape or attempted rape. That also says that 2,600 Pacific Island men will experience rape or attempted rape during their life. So, and then if we use the statistic that 1 in 3 and 1 in 4, we're looking at approximately 13,333 Pacific Island females. And I'm going to use that as a range. So what these statistics, what data is showing us is that between 8,000 and 13,000 Pacific Island women are going to experience rape in this state or attempted rape during their lifetime. And so I wanted, just to put, again, some context of the community that I serve, and the numbers around that. So is it a unique issue? I'd like to just take a step way back and let's think about this. When we are born, we have no say in what gender we're going to be, what birth country we come into, what income level, what nationality, what abilities we have. So our life experiences are different by design. So what's the equalizer here then? If we're already starting out in a very unique, everybody is in a unique situation and we had no say about it, think about what the equalizer is here. So what's not so unique is that everybody is searching to be happy. You can ask women and people all over the world. We all want the same thing for ourselves and our children: safety, food, shelter, clothes, education, and healthcare. Our basic human rights is what we are searching for. So because we're uniquely created, that means that our learning and our healing and many other things must be uniquely created. one size does not fit all. And I think that we're learning that here in the state of Utah, that one size does not fit all. But it also starts from the inside out. If we open Pandora's box to our inner self, it starts with us looking at ourselves in the mirror and getting to know ourselves, acknowledging and conquering our own biases. While getting to know ourselves is the unpacking of all of our cultures that we belong to. I belong to, I have an ethnic culture, I have a home culture, I have a religious culture, our community is a culture, school cultures. I mean, can you think of or post some of the cultures that you can think of that you belong to? I mean, very dimensional here because we each are uniquely involved in many things that make up our life experiences. And we want to unmute and share any of the unique communities that you belong to.
Someone posted work culture.
Yeah, work culture is a great one. We spend a lot of time at work, right? And all of us make up our uniqueness in all of the cultures that we belong to. Um,
Too much time at work sometimes.
yes, too much time, right? That's a whole nother workshop, right? Working too much. So, to make sense of our feelings and our experience really takes honesty and broadening our perspectives. There is a Tongan scholar who says this, that says our genealogy and our identity are not negotiable. So again, we're not one size fits all. And because we don't live in our ethnic country, and many are born here in the United States and raised, there is a lack of identity or that plays into the role in our worldviews. Who am I? Where do I fit? And I'm gonna we want to talk about this first before we get to sexual assault because I believe that this all plays into how we heal and some of the nuances about Pacific Island culture. So Pacific Islanders are warriors. We're navigators. We are adaptable people. As a navigator, you go to an island, you adapt, you're resourceful. Our ancestors are the keepers of the largest body of water in the world. I am a pro Pacific Islander. People need people. And my ancestors did not come to this country dumb. We are our ancestors' greatest dreams. I always want to say to people that talk to me about cultural relevancy is nothing about us without us. Nothing should be about us without us being at the table. So, what are those protective factors versus risk factors in Pacific Island communities? Culture is fluid, and I'm just going to say that these thoughts come from my own unique experience from being a transracial adoptee. I'm a survivor, an advocate, a certified peer support, a practitioner with over 30 years in many states in underserved communities. Um, there's another, I would say, quote or saying that culturally, religiously, people have been taught that the measure of our love is in how much you are willing to suffer, aka ride or die. I don't care what they did to me. I'll never tell my mom, dad, uncle, grandpa. We are conditioned to protect those that harm us. And I want you to think about that. When I heard this saying, I really had to think about that. In my own Pacific Island culture, it really does align with what I've seen and with my own personal experiences. And so, before we talk about risk factors and protective factors, I call these reality factors. What are the cultural norms, right? So before we can get to risk factors, and that there are some cultural framework that we work in that maybe we are it's our cultural norm. And so again, my disclaimer here is that I'm sharing this from my own life experiences. I mean, there is no Pacific Island data, which is a gap, right? The subject in the US, except for we did a community assessment many years ago when we started at Pigtar. It seems like it's one of the few community assessments that's been out there around violence, and I'm happy to share that. This is my life experience as a Tongan female transracial adoptee. So my experience is not going to be the same as other Pacific Islanders, as each of our Pacific Island experiences are not going to be the same. We're each unique. So in the 9 years that we've been doing this work, um, we've had very few victims actually press charges. I am proud to say that we've had two abusers, fathers of victims, who have gone to jail or prison. I'm proud to say that because we are not a community that calls the police. We are not a community that goes through the court systems. Very far and few between. So I've tried to unpack this, and many times I've tried to unpack this, is to find the solutions for victims and survivors and perpetrators who all need healing. Um, what is unique about our community is that we love the perpetrator as much as we do the victim. We don't like what the perpetrator did, but we know that both need services. We we believe in what's the word? Restorative justice. And so the part of having protective measures is the family, is community. And so we want the perpetrator, they're going to come back to our community anyway, because that's where their family is. And I always say to service providers and for prisons, they come back broken, even more. Did you do your job? But then it comes right back to the community and the family to help this perpetrator get their lives back in order. We don't want them um, to reoffend, but that's the reality of it. That perpetrators are not getting the help that they need, where they're going to jail or they're going to prison, and they come back to our communities. And so just several of these reality, what I'll say cultural norms, lack of communication skills. I think the older generation um, weren't we didn't learn how to have difficult conversations. Communication is mom and dad talk to children, and children just accept. We don't talk back. We don't question. It just is. So very hard for a victim to share if you don't have the communication skills, if you don't know the names of the parts of your body. um, Very difficult to share your story. The sexual assault detectives in this valley have told me over and over, does your community think that moving perpetrators from city to city, from one family member to another, is solving your problem? It's not. I was very surprised when I had a sexual assault detective tell me I'd never even thought about it, that they could see what's happening in our community. I always wonder, are we lacking the communication skills to solve the problem in the home that they are living in? Are we just moving them to a brother, to a sister, to somebody else's home? And then there's another issue. And because somehow the sexual assault detectives know this in Utah about us. Um, a lot of it's none of our business. It's disrespectful to talk to your elders about their bad behavior. Let's just look the other way. And I don't know that that's a unique thing in Pacific Island culture. I have a feeling that that is in many cultures, not just in Pacific Island. Another gap that I have seen is mental health and emotional health stigma. Um, the gap is if a parent, and I've had this actually happen. Why I bring this up? I had a parent that came to me who already saw in their child that there may be some tendencies for violence or sexual assault. They asked me, where do I take my child to get services? I bet you all the advocates that are in this call, where would you send them? I had no idea what this parent, to tell this parent. And the mother said to me, I don't want my child to go to prison and have to go to prison to learn this. I thought she was very, very forward thinking by even trying to reach out to get the skills that she thought, the first thing I thought of is to get her child into therapy. That was the only thought that I have, but that's a gap, right? If you already know there's a problem in your family and you're trying to be proactive, do you wait until your child goes to prison and offends? What is the proactive solution here in this case? Um, because there is a stigma around mental health and emotional health, and it really is getting better. Um, I think having support groups, having talk story spaces where people can share is really helping around that area, as well as communication skills, because we're learning how to have open dialogue with each other. We're learning how to label feelings, how to express ourselves. So kudos to those that are doing group supports, those that are doing talk story spaces, because I believe that in these two areas, it's definitely going to help them. And another cultural norm, maybe a gap, but something that may be different about our culture is marriages, ranked societies. We have arranged marriages. Um, in a traditional Tongan marriage, you move into your husband's family. You even may even switch churches to go to be the same religion as your husband. Uh, One of the original Kavatox men, who was a bishop, shared that he thinks women that stay in abusive relationships were strong and that they were holding it together for two families. And he was surprised that I didn't agree with him and that the facilitator didn't agree. But do you see his normalization was he was proud, and he thought how honorable it was for our women to stay in an abusive relationship, to hold these families together, to hold their own personal family together. And again, what's the proactive? How do we stop that from happening? So again, just things I'm throwing out here.
And
Um,
Susie,
yeah.
would you mind explaining what Kava Talks is for those who don't know?
Oh, I apologize. Yes. So when we started Pictar 9 years ago, it started my husband wanted to start defining what violence was for Tongan men. CAVA stands for Knowledge Above Violence Always. It's an acronym. CAVA is also a traditional drink that our men drink when they solve problems. And in in Tonga, the king does it to solve problems. A church does it. A school does it. A family drinks where the men gather. And so it's a men's support group. They meet on Thursdays online, and I'm very excited. We start in the prison. We will be now taking Kabatox and Gogi. We will be in the prisons on Fridays at 6:30, and providing a support group there, as well as education. And we're going to start out with one unit there, and then we will grow to all of the other men's units and women's unit. So we will start next month, and excited to have Kabatox taking this step there. And that's again who's doing the walk that Jorge was talking about. That's their Kavatox Heels to Heel walk, and the men walk in high heels. Um, Again, I want to go back to that quote that I talked about: is culturally, religiously, people have been taught that the measure of our love is in how much you are willing to suffer, aka ride or die. Again, what this bishop was saying, he was honoring women that stay in abusive relationships because they're holding families together, right? Again, that measure of love is how much you are willing to suffer. That humility, right? That cultural humility that's looked at as very positive, but very harmful. Um, and so, if you, I've heard even victims say, if I tell my dad or if I'd have told my brother, they would do something to the perpetrator, and then they would go to prison. And then it would be my fault if we don't have money, right? So I'll just keep this to myself. I kept it to myself for years, um, because the income loss in a home, that maybe the victim is seeing that, feeling it, and doesn't want to be the cause of losing that income in their home.
Susie?
Uh-huh.
You said to ask questions as soon as they pop
Yeah.
up. So I
Yeah,
want
yeah.
to get to that. But also, I mean, I love that point because I'm always talking about how when we're fighting against poverty, and against economic opportunities, we're also fighting against violence, right? Because um, that's a direct, example of how that can affect a situation. But I was wondering, with considering what you were saying about that hesitation to like or that need to suffer to prove your love in a way. Have you found any approach? And I might be getting ahead of you, but have you found any like approaches that help individuals in that situation feel safe about seeking help, even if it's not through the criminal justice system?
In support group, I think building value in people, you will speak up when you feel like you're valued and that you're going to be heard. And so a lot of work is done in support groups on many levels to gather the skills that are needed to move forward, to call the police, to speak up for yourself, to say I'm not going to take this anymore, and to have the strength and the confidence to move your family into a shelter or to make the moves that you're needed to do. A lot of good work is done in peer to peer support groups, and in therapy, in my mind. But no, beyond that, I haven't. I haven't thought of anything else. But like I said, I've tried to unpack these things over and over in my mind to find solutions, proactive solutions, and how I could um, come up with an initiative or something to help community members. We are a restorative justice community. And as an example, if someone stole your pig, let's say in the islands, two families would sit down together, and the two heads of families, the two males, would sit down and they would come up with a solution. And maybe the solution is okay, when crops come next season, your family would get the first, and we'll pay you back in that way. But it's discussed, decided, and then done. The other issue that I have in my thoughts here are non-documented. And I know that being non-documented is not so unique. And maybe this next is not so unique either, but I have noticed in many of the victims and survivors that I have worked with that it has been a lifetime of violence. Labor trafficking in many cases that I have seen, that a family member told their mom and dad, your child should come and live with us in the United States and go to school, find a spouse, get a degree, work for our family landscaping business, but then the youth is not paid at all, and those are definitions of labor trafficking. Our community is not, I think, adverse or educated yet on that idea. But what I've noticed in several of the females that I worked with, that's how they got to this country. And then sexual assault was happening in their household. And then they got pregnant and got pregnant to Auntie's husband and didn't want to say who was. And so Auntie starts hitting because she wants to know who the father is. The young lady doesn't want to say. She either runs away and gets herself into any kind of relationship at that point to get to safety. And so I have seen that be a common thread of the lifetime of violence that labor trafficking can produce. Um,
Susie?
you know, yeah.
I mean, that's incredible. Thanks for sharing that. I hadn't even thought about all of that. But there's a question on here. Um, if you were to leave, is it looked down upon?
I yes, I would. I'm almost positive it is like it would be ungrateful. Why are they ungrateful? And then again, this is a youth, right? If a wife leaves a husband, um, again, she's tearing up the family, right? Because remember, this is a collective society, and so we do what's best for the whole. And how do we balance that in a country that it's about individual? and you have a family to take care of too. And society doesn't all run in a collective process. I mean, in a collective society, in a village, it all works if everybody is giving and everybody is getting what they need to survive. But in this country, that's not often how it works. Um, so those are kinds of the things that I have just figured out that maybe not maybe unique about our cultures. Um, and then I looked at kind of protective and harmful factors, and I thought that some of these can go both ways. Being faith-based community can both be a protective and a harmful. Um, Being from a collective society can both be harmful and a protective factor uh, in however it's utilized. Um, I think what are unique challenges that are faced by Pacific Island individuals and communities that exist in our state is in the support or the lack of culturally relevant support for our population. I mean, our community is not calling the police to report sexual assaults. How those are coming to us, how referrals are coming to us, is usually the schools are reporting, the Children's Justice Center, or it is past clients that we have helped, or people that either present or past clients that are still in group or have been to group that are giving us our referrals. They're coming from the community. Um, every once in a while, we will have a police referral from an advocate, but very rare are those. Again, we don't call the police uh, yet, is what I'm seeing. I mean, our community is relatively small per se, so our family and relationships are deep and they're far reaching. And so through our support group, present and past participants, we continue to serve a lot of referrals that come from our past clients that have experienced our services, that they trust us, and they've had a good experience, so they share it with somebody else, and that to come and get services from us.
Yeah, there's somebody
Um,
on here, support is a big one. Yeah.
yes,
So when you
yeah,
said like referrals through like the support group, so these are people who've participated in the support group, and
hmm
then someone from the community trusts them, so they disclose to them.
yeah.
Hmm.
Or they heard of it, and it's usually a family member that we will get. Um, we are getting now drop-ins into our office now of people that have heard, and they're just walking in now, which says that we're growing in the
Yeah.
trust with us, because now people just come by our office and or leave us a note on the door. Can you please
Wow.
call me? Um, Whereas before they were all coming from our support groups or family. The other unique, would say, is our advocates. If we see something on social media, I don't feel comfortable doing this, but a lot of our advocates, if they see something in social media, if it's a family member or somebody, though, or even if it's not, they'll reach out and say, these are the services we provide. If there's something we can do to help, let us know. And I don't know that that scares me. I'm not comfortable in doing that, and I don't know that in a lot of other communities, but our many of our advocates feel comfortable in watching, um, going through social media if they see something, need a food resource or something, and then that's building that relationship, and then building the relationship of trust, and then if there's an issue. But yeah, that's where most of our referrals come from.
And something else I wanted to share, because I always try to get people to understand um, that, because a lot of people will like maybe sometimes even judge that a community doesn't call the police, and trying to get them to understand like this is a reality for communities. Like they have a lot of history, maybe. Like, and I always share my example of me growing up in South Central Los Angeles, mostly Latino community. Like we would only call 911 when it was a health emergency or a fire. Anything else, we dealt with it with the neighborhood. I mean, we didn't want, a lot of times introducing a gun was just going to make things worse. So that's just the way we did. And that might not seem like common sense to people, but I think when you try to put yourself in that community situation and history, it's a little bit easier to understand that, so that we're not judging them for not doing what we think they should do.
I think also too, when we call the police, like in the Pacific Island community, I have worked on many cases where we called the police and then we end up going to jail, right? And so we don't want to call, we want help, but when we did call, we're kicking ourselves in the butt because we called and somebody in our family went to jail. We've got undocumented people. We have people that maybe have a warrant out for their arrest and didn't know it. Or I know in some domestic violence, the the victim called and then they end up being the perpetrator and being hauled off to jail. So it's a very scary thing for many communities to call the police, because police doesn't equal safety to us, doesn't equal help to us. So we'll just roll the dice instead of calling, because if they get involved, 9 times out of 10 somebody in our own family is going to go to jail or something bad is going to happen. And I mean, I even think that for myself. I wouldn't call the police because there's not a lot of trust that the police are going to help me, and I probably would go to jail or my husband go to jail or somebody that I care about. It's just going to cause more problems. And many of our community members live in crisis already, and if somebody goes to jail, who's going to bail them out? Who has the money? It just adds so many other layers on top of it. Yeah, so a lot of the reports that we get come from school, come from Children's Justice Center. Very few come from law enforcement agencies, um, but really do come from our community. Going to a shelter is difficult for our community. I've even had shelters tell me, please don't send them here. They've got 9 children, right? We don't, we can't house them in our shelter. We don't have the room. I've had to use or work closely with the polygamous safe houses. They are used to having large families. And why does the polygamy community have their own safe houses? Because of the same reason. Because they have so many children. And it's very tough for mainstream shelters to accept that. I mean, with shelters, that's just the first issue with the shelters. It's not comfortable for us to go without another female. We probably would go to safety if we could take our sister with us, if we could take a friend with us. It's a very unfamiliar place for us to go, uncomfortable, stressful, don't have the foods we want to eat, sharing space with people you don't know. And so you add all of those in, and then you add the rules in shelters. And I can't tell you how many times I mean, do you know, as an advocate, how long I'm always so happy when I have someone that wants to go to the shelter and then I can't find them space in the shelter, right? And so if you actually get to the point that you can get someone in the shelter, I always feel um, that I did a really good job because I actually got someone all the way to the shelter. And then something happens and they lost their bed the next day, right? They didn't read the rules, something happened, they left, weren't able to get back. Um, and then they're out again and we're trying to get them back in. And so the rules seem to um, not be so conducive maybe to the crisis that we are in. I don't know if that's unique or not, probably not. Lack of cultural relevancy in the services in the shelter, lack of cultural relevancy in any of the services that are out there for healing, crisis, housing. Language is a barrier. And just because you speak English does not mean that you have good comprehension of English. Those are two different things. And often when you go to a service provider that doesn't look like you, doesn't understand, if you speak English, then their assumption is that you understand or you read English. that's not always the case. And then I would say, generational trauma that's handed down in our culture. If the trauma is not handled in one generation, it's going to come to the next. Statistics say that you have to have lived 3 generations without trauma or without violence in your 3 generations before it's worked out of your family tree. Statistically, that's what they say. Um, so we'll cover the obstacles and the opportunities that exist in the support of our population, but honestly, we lack data. I mean, any of the data in the state is not broken down by ethnicity. Um, and that goes for perpetrators as well. I mean, we can't find criminal justice data that is desegregated. Often the police tell me it's because they stopped putting ethnicity on the driver's license and therefore it's self-reported, and so we don't have the data. Even if we wanted to see how many sexual assault um, perpetrators or crimes were in our community, that data is not even available for us. So we're shooting in the dark here. We track data from just our work and how many victims and services that we've provided, and so we use that data for ours. Um, it is. I mean, I just want to open this up for questions at this point, or thoughts, or experiences that you've had. If anybody would like to share anything. Yeah, Nani, I would love for you. She's got a 3-minute digital story on domestic violence that she said she can share. And like I said, she is a powerful advocate from San Francisco that's an ally that runs groups in the Pacific Island community. Nani, do you want to go off mute and just introduce yourself, and then yeah, let's play your video.
Okay, thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I am Nani Wilson. Like Sister Susie said, I'm not only an advocate, a long-term community advocate for our community. I would say over 40 plus years. It's because I've just been blessed to be involved in things that have happened and been obstacles for us. But I am also a survivor of domestic violence. And so over here in San Mateo County, we were able to be blessed with a opportunity to create digital stories. And I don't know if you are familiar with digital stories, but they are basically like 3-minute stories that are created by a storyteller. The storyteller usually is a person of the community. And with an overarching theme, we had a workshop, and it was something that in regards to like talking about things that are taboo in our community, right? And so in the Pacific Islander community, this is very taboo. Sister Susie is definitely, with a lot of other of our community leaders, has been really pushing to get rid of stigma around taboo topics, especially in our community, because if we can talk about it, we can normalize and have conversation and begin to heal. So we're still in the beginning stages around anything with wellness. We are late bloomers, but we are still riding the waves. And so one of our lovely staff here, Miss Lulu, is going to set up the video. It's a short 3-minute video. I am going to just do a disclaimer. Please feel free, after we just want to ask a couple of questions, feel free to ask as well. It is a story for me to share with you. It is part of my lived experience, and it's captured around the topic in 3 minutes. So could you please allow her to share the screen with you all? It's Lueni Masina.
I think Jorge would have to do that. Jorge, you want to?
Okay, I just clicked on it. Should be ready.
Okay, Miss Lou, is it good? Okay.
It would
So,
also probably work better if folks turn off their camera and then we'll turn it back on just for the bandwidth.
great. And we also partnered with San Mateo County to do this behavioral health. So
Sorry, I believe it's buffering. Sorry. Let me try something. All right, give me 1 second.
As Lulu's working on that, I just thought I'd share some other insight too, is when we started this meeting for the community once a month, rape and molestation was like a primary target. Actually, we had a community member, a Tongan community member, come to us and say, I want to create a space for our Pacific Islanders to talk about these taboo topics. And we were able to come together and have a once a month meeting. And, these topics came up, right? And it was really very surprising. A lot of our community members didn't realize until we started sharing around molestation that a lot of our men in our community also shared that they were molested. And they really, we think that, the females are having big issues, but also the males really suppress it because of a variety of reasons. And so, we tried to see if we could get a support group going, but it was really hard for us over here because a lot of men weren't ready to talk about it yet. And so, I give a lot of credit to our sister in Utah making that happen and providing those spaces, because we just need a few champions to start it. So, okay, Lou, you ready? Here is the 3-minute story.
Too white to be brown, too brown to be white. Lineages of warriors: Samoan, Tahitian, Hawaiian, Irish, English, Iroquois, Indian. In our culture, only high chiefs or family matriarchs have a voice. Generations rich in culture, true native of San Francisco, 3rd generation to be exact, raised by a family of strong women, warriors in their own rights. Relationship A: hit because partner didn't like the words that came out of my mouth. Relationship B: in my first apartment's kitchen doorway, being vocal about my feelings. Slam, the sound of a cold folding chair upon my body. What the hell? Is this really happening? Slam, as I rise up my arms to protect myself from the next blow. My lava lava falls to the ground as he pushes me out the door with a final strike of the chair and slams the door shut. There I stand naked with only a folding chair to cover me, humiliated beyond belief. Relationship C: he doesn't like the truth coming out of my mouth. As I turn to walk away, he sideblinds my right eye. If I call the police, I will be identified as a weak woman. A true warrior can take a punch. The coconut wire will know as soon as I dial 911. I need to protect my family. I have to stop accepting verbal or physical abuse as part of a relationship. I can no longer keep it as the unspoken ways of our lifestyles. I have to make things right, even if it is not accepted. I am a warrior for peace. My core is centered from love, respect, and the belief in our higher power. My voice will be my tool to battle negativity. From each life's experience, I will continue to seek positive outcomes so that our future generations will live in peace.
Thank you so much, Nani. And this is an example of what a community can do. We're not even there yet here in Utah, but I hope that we can follow the suit of what they're doing in San Francisco and tell these stories because honestly, that is the most important thing that I have found that really changes people. I think that's the greatest thing we can do is tell our stories, and that it helps victims know that they're not alone. And once they can feel that they're not alone, they also will start telling their stories. And then as we tell our stories, they become part of another's healing story. And it goes on and on. That is exactly how we built Kava Talks. We didn't even have a survivor, a male survivor, that was telling their story. And one night we had an LGBTQ young man come in and shared his healing. And then he told his story. And then another man that came to group said, "Oh, I have a story too." And then his brothers came in and started telling their story. Now I'm really proud to say we have 5 or 6 Polynesian men that now can stand in a room and tell their story. And I always say it's not about the story about the act. What's really important is the story of healing. How did they recognize that they needed help, right? So that the next person that's hearing the story can follow suit, that they've got a pathway, they've got a friend, that they don't have to feel like they're alone. So I mean, I know that I have more time, but this was my closing, was that that is the greatest thing we can do, is to tell our stories, and so that people know that they're not alone. And for us, we are, that is so cultural. We are storytellers, is that we need to continue to do that and open the spaces up to make them safe so that people can tell their story without judgment, without being condemned. And then that spark of healing can begin. So I know that I have lots of time left over. I think I only spoke for an hour, but that's a lot for me.
No, you're
Um,
fine.
to talk. But if anybody has any questions or thoughts, things that have happened with Pacific Islanders as you've been an advocate, I do know, I'm just going to share why I opened it up and wanted to. I did a presentation one time, and a lady that worked at a shelter asked me, how come our people scalp our women? And I was really taken back by that. And I said, can you define scalp for me? They had shaved her head. And that is very different than scalping, right? But she got mixed up with cultures, but also that is a way that we shame, is by shaving hair. So a husband may shave the wife's hair so that she doesn't go out. A mom may shave the daughter's hair so she doesn't go outside of the house. Um, and I felt like every time that I speak, I always want to open it up for people that have worked with Pacific Islanders, that have interesting things happen to them that they can't make sense of. To feel comfortable to ask those questions here. Another one that I want to share that a lot of advocates have said, and therapists and practitioners, we are taught that respect is not looking you in the eyes. And so police, when they pull over our community, they automatically think there's something shady is up because the person is not looking in their eyes. But take that, please, as respect. The other thing is that we usually don't sit on the front row. We'll sit on the back row to give you, like, but you go into a American event, the first thing they say is, everybody that's sitting in the back, come sit in the front. Right? And I know that is the way, the culture that we live in America, but people were sitting on the back row to give respect to the event, to the speaker, right? But the cultural context, that people don't know it. So if you have any questions, any thoughts, please feel free to drop them in the chat, or you can unmute.
Something I do want to also bring up is I'm always interested in creative ways to, get services or connect with communities, right? And I always say, like, our rape crisis centers are not going to be, the solution for everybody, but at least know, like, who you can work with, to maybe get some of those services. Like, I'm excited about the idea of having like places work with culturally specific groups like PICTAR or Comunidades Unidas or something like that. And I really think we need to kind of push against this habit of gatekeeping that no, these are the services we do. They need to come to us. And so I think it's important to kind of work with organizations such as yours to understand maybe what can we do, come up with creative solutions, or maybe if it is that rape crisis center that can work, like how do we reach that population? An example I like to give is that when I was working at Rape Recovery Center in Salt Lake City, we were coming up on our 50th anniversary. And so we looked up the historical archives of the things to kind of put our history together. And something that was fascinating is like within the first year, 1974, 75, around there, we had a flyer. And it was really cool to find this old flyer from 1975 for a rape crisis center. And it had like the typewriter font, you know, where the letters are a little bit crooked. And obviously it was printed out on the old, like, you know, kind of copy machines, those things. And it had a cute little like icon of a phone that says call this number. And what was cool is you flipped it over and it was all in Spanish. And I'm like, whoa, this is 1974, 75. I mean, and to this day, a lot less Latina women know about Rape Recovery Center than white women do in Salt Lake County. So I always say like translating your brochures is not effective outreach for many communities. So I would encourage, you know, organizations who are interested in that to work with like organizations like PICTAR to find out, you know, what does that population look like in our community? Because they're there. If you think they're not, then you're just not looking, kind of thing, and work on that. But yeah, what are some of the like services that PICTAR offers, you know, and assistance?
So we have three pillars, and so the services, the direct services fall under Empowered Living Services, which is Lulu Wolfgram, that's the director there. And so we have our men's support group, our women's support group. We provide a food bank, or oversee, organize it twice a month. Um, Domestic violence advocates, sexual assault advocates. Uh, I mean, we provide no barrier services. So you're not going to get a no from us. If we don't know, if we've never walked down that path, we'll walk with somebody through that path to figure it out. We're never going to turn anybody away. Um, I wanted to piggyback on what you said about services that are needed. I think that there's some structural racism, that we fight, being a community-based ethnic organization. And I'm going to go back to something that happened when we first started. Rape Recovery and PICTAR wanted to write a Pacific Island violence prevention education curriculum. And we both applied for the grant through the health department, and Rape Recovery got it, but we didn't. And Rape Recovery called and said, okay, Susie, we're ready to work on this. I said, well, no, we didn't get funded, so we won't be working with you on this. They said, well, how can we do a Pacific Island violence education curriculum without the Pacific Islanders? And I said, well, I don't know. Ask the health department, because apparently they think that you can do this without us. So we made an appointment with the health department. We went in, and I had just moved to Utah. So I didn't realize that we were so far behind in thought and in how things are done here. And this director told me that our community has always done things for free, and they thought we were just going to do that for free. And I was so shocked to hear that. And I said to the director, how much do you get paid as a content expert? $100 an hour? So why do you think you should be paid and our team should not be paid as content experts? Because Rape Recovery was sitting with me saying, we can't write this curriculum without them. And I said, well, apparently this woman thinks that you can. And she said to me that no one had ever came in and talked to her about this. And I finally just got to the point to say, did you realize that it's just wrong? Right? It's wrong. And so we worked through that. And I think that as a society, we're getting better at that the people with the least amount of money, with the least amount of time, are not being asked to give the most. right? Do you see how inequitable that is in the work that we do? And so I think that also plays into what your question was, Horace. How do we do better? Well, we do better by making sure that the people that are getting the funding are subcontracting the work out, acknowledging that they can't do the job as well as we can from our communities, and partner up and pay us to do it. There's, that is such a logical thing in my mind of that's how you help each other. That's how we grow. Um, it doesn't make sense that those that are getting the most money in the state are going to try to do Pacific Island work or Hispanic work when it's not run by them. And it's not run. I always say, nothing about us without us. Do the right thing and contract with us, right? And let us do the things that we love to do. We love our community. We want to do the work, and we're doing it for free already. So please help us by contracting the work out to us. And like you said, gatekeeping, Jorge, is too many people are out there gatekeeping. I don't even know if that's the word gatekeeping. It's just chasing money. Everybody's trying to make their budgets. Everybody's trying to pay their staff. But the trickle down effect hurts us the most, because we are at the bottom of the barrel. Everybody else, the state will write for a grant for the federal government for underserved communities, and everybody takes their cut until it comes down to us and there's no money left, right? So on the backs of our community, does the state get large amounts of money that's not being dispersed to the people that it was written and intended for? And I would guess that happens in every state, that we're not the only one like that. But, again, it goes back to our political power, right? We have to organize, we have to speak our views, and we have to stand up for ourselves, because this is relative to exactly the work we do, because it takes money. And that money's coming from the federal government, then we need to advocate for ourselves and stand up for ourselves. So a long answer for your comment there, Jorge.
No, great answer. Thank you. And I think a lot of people don't see that, right? It's easy to not see it because that's the way we've always done it. So I remember the first time someone saying like, well, these communities should be getting paid. I was like, whoa, you're right. I hadn't even thought of that.
Right.
Like, it's just the way it's always been.
Yeah. And I think until when Rape Recovery and I went in and had that conversation with that director at the health department, she literally said to me, that's not the way we've done it. You guys have always done it for free. And my answer was, is that right? And she just looked at me like she had never thought about it. She had to think about that, right? But I'll tell you what the outcome was of that. I mean, I'm used to, like, in California and other states, you don't start a grant without a community assessment. In Utah, apparently that's done left and right. They don't seem to have a baseline here, but weird to me. And so I had asked for money for a community assessment. She gave me $5,000. And I looked at her and said, for a community assessment? Like, you're joking, right, lady? We took it, we do the best we can. But again, I think that's that structural racism that we face, that as a community-based organization, not only do we have to worry about our clients and our community and programming and filling the grants requirements, but now we've got to worry about structural racism, and how do we get what is rightfully ours? And I think a lot of people don't think. I've said to, those of you that have worked with me know that I've said, have you ever thought about if we just didn't apply for any of these grants that the state gave? What if none of us applied for it? The state would be on a hook because they already wrote the grant, got approved for it. Did they ask us, any of us, what we're going to do for this grant? No, but I've always said, like, one of these times all of us are going to band together and say, no, we're not applying for that grant at all. How are you going to do it now, state? So, yeah, that's been my, that's my Thelma Louise in me to fight. Anybody else have any questions or thoughts? And I know we've kind of gone off the topic here, but I think it's all relative and all relevant to the work we do um, in the many different levels in running an organization and being a community builder.
And how can people reach Pictar if they want to know
Oh,
more?
yep. I'll drop my phone number and my email address. Our office is 824 South, 400 West. Our front door faces 4th West. Always welcome there. And I'll drop my phone number.
And that's Salt Lake, but I know that you've done work across the state, right?
Oh yeah, we do work all over. We just that's where our office is. But yes, we do work in Tooele, Washington County, Davis County, and our services. We are an ecosystem. We are definitely we have that village mentality that we're not segmented. So somebody may come in through our Chamber of Commerce and Business, and then need services over here to get food, and they'll slide over here to ELS, and our advocate there will help, or they may have another need. So an advocate from another program will step in seamlessly, you know, because it's taking care of the whole person. And when it comes to sexual assault, it affects every area in somebody's life. And if you can't solve the sexual assault over here without making sure that they've got food and a shelter over their head and clothes on their back, and their children have food, right? And the employment. So making sure that the human rights are covered are so very important. And so, yeah, we somebody may come in through the chamber but need services. Somebody may come into group and want to participate in arts. And so we definitely are an ecosystem here as well. Well, thank you. Unless anybody has any questions, we'll give you some time back. And thank you so much for listening, and please reach out anytime. And thank you, Nani, for sharing your digital video with us and showing up all the way from San Francisco.
Yes, thank you.
Appreciate that.
Okay, so I will be recording this. This is recorded, like I said, and I'll be uploading it to our YouTube channel. So I know some people wanted to watch it, but weren't able to make it. So make sure to share that, with your teams. And with that, I hope you have a great long weekend. And I'll see you at the next webinar. Have a good
Thank you,
rest of your
Jorge.
day. Bye.